Oh, so we are a little bit early
Yeah.
then.
No,
Okay.
no, you go. You go.
Okay. Well, first of all, Pierre, thank you for the invite and the nice words as usual. I must moderate a little bit your statements. I'm just trying to be a modest contributor with some knowledge and not everything is known to me. But in this context, I think it's a very important topic that we have at our hands, particularly when we are looking at, well, the famous climate change and what is happening at COP20 or happened at COP26. And the challenge is obviously we need to deal with CO2 emissions, and what does it mean in the context, not just in terms of energy, but also in terms of materials. And I believe, for example, that the energy question is being addressed. The materials issue is a very different one, and I believe it's pretty much underestimated. And I think we are facing a bit of a paradigm change that is needed also when we talk about materials. Because if we look at the example of nature, then nature understands how to deal with carbon, and nature has been storing carbon already for many million years, and also knows how to deal with it in that context. And as a consequence, when we talk about resources for carbon that we want to use for materials, I think we need to also understand what it takes to turn a feedstock into a material. And there, I believe that in the last 70 years, we have been living in a bit of a mindset where we have a relatively cheap feedstock, which is, by the way, also a bio-based feedstock, although generated over many millions of years. And the question there is, how can we generate something that is similar, but can be regenerated in a relatively short span of life? That means typically a lifetime of a human being, so that we have a renewable resource, and that obviously brings us back to plants typically. And then the question is, what kind of chemistry do we do with that? And that is mainly carbohydrates and proteins, which are also used in nature as a circular product. The challenge obviously is, it is not that there is not enough of these materials or these molecules available. The question is, how do we really turn that into materials that we can use? And here I think we need to go back something like 70 years maybe, and reinvent or revisit what 100 years ago was more or less the standard operational procedures until we invented the synthetic plastics. The challenges that we have obviously is, as I said, we need to go back in time, obviously with much more knowledge, and that will require to rethink how we are going to change the value chains and how we are going to change the transformation from something that is associated with an infrastructure that has been built up and has costed many billions or even trillions, I would say, and that is not going to be something that one throws away just like that. But we need to, I believe, to reinvent the way we use these infrastructure, probably with some modifications, in order to get into the possibilities to make the feedstock that is available for making the materials that we need. And when we talk about materials, I think nature works with polymers. So typically one refers to these materials as biopolymers, bio-based materials. And also there, besides the use of wood and some other, let's say, wood-like materials, which we all are very familiar with, if we focus on the materials that are the most successful in the last 70 years, being plastics, having been an effort over the last 70 years of replacing the classical materials, let's say metals, ceramics, and also wood. This effort needs to be reconsidered, because we do have, with regard to plastics, certainly the synthetically made plastics, an issue. But the issue is not just about replacing the synthetic plastic with something that is bio-based, or which is synthetically made, like PLA or whatever, because we need to consider this in a life cycle. In other words, even if we make bio-based materials that are going to be replacing the current plastics, for example, then we still need to consider the fact that we need to collect them after use, and we need to understand what's going to happen then with these. And the easy answer would be, oh, it's going to be composting. But is that really the only solution? And let's not forget that we are talking here about millions of tons when we talk about a global scale. So the question of sources is obviously, can we use the plants that we regenerate, but also can we already use the amounts of agricultural products that we at the moment are not really using because they are considered as waste. Because agriculture typically has the mindset of, I want to generate nutritional value, and this nutritional value is fine, but it comes with a lot of waste. And these waste are, again, these materials, these carbohydrates, and these proteins that we can actually consider as polymers that would be useful for making and turning into materials. And I think these are the two perspectives that we need to think of. And then obviously understand that if we want to create a value chain that at the moment is really, in my opinion, not really existing, it is going to require, first of all, how can we use the existing infrastructure that we have, which is mainly based on petroleum from the chemical industry perspective, and how can we then transform these feedstocks into the right materials, understanding that we need to have a circular system in place. And as a consequence, I think these are something that I believe is very much underestimated, and will take, first of all, a lot of new thinking and a lot of new investments, and will take time, because we really need to reinvent a new paradigm here. And certainly all these resources that are available, and to some extent are also wasted from the oceans, can play certainly a significant role. Why? Also because they are distributed across the globe. It's not anymore, I have a source here or I have a source there, and you end up with some geopolitical challenges. You also have the materials available in different formats, of course. I mean, the plants that you grow in Europe or the plants that you grow in Saskatchewan or in Brazil are not necessarily the same, but the chemicals that compose these products are essentially the same. So having said that, I think we have a major challenge in front of us, but I think it's a challenge that is necessary if we will have to deal with the existing challenges of CO2 control or carbon management, I would call it. And certainly the bio-based and the marine environment can play a significant role here. So I think I have my 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Rudy, to be always on time. I'm going to pass the floor to Simon, to manage this very interesting session where we have oil and gas, fashion, cosmetic industry, and plastic industry, because Rudy is coming also from the plastic industry. So Simon, I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to remain, silent if I can in the background. Don't hesitate, to whistle, if you need me to come in. Okay? It's
okay,
up
good.
to you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you, Rudy, for your introduction. For everybody, my name is Simon Barnabé. I am from the University of Quebec at Trois-Rivières. I am a true biomass believer, and I'm always trying to do my best to develop sustainable biomass supply chain for people like you guys around the table. And I'm pleased today to be the moderator of this session. We will speak about the biomaterial or the bioresource of the future. Can we have more microalgae, seaweed, cellulose fiber, agriculture byproducts, or any other natural ingredient in our packaging? Are we looking for recyclability, compostability? Are we talking about, we are talking about revisiting, rethinking, but what it really means for each sector. There are so many questions and opportunities, but our companies can make the right choices. And which industry or which company will change the role of material and packaging? So we'll talk about this during this session with Rudy. Rudy already give us a good idea of what will happen in all of this world of material. And we have three other panelists from three different sectors. We are happy to have with us Ryan Dermody, the president of Norcan Petroleum Group in Canada, which represents the oil and petroleum industry. We have here also with us Mr. Cédric Dever, the packaging material strategy manager from L'Oréal in France, which represents the personal care products industry. And we have with us Ms. Annick Jain, president of HubMod and Fashion Green Hub in France, which represent the fashion industry. So I will ask to my three other panelists to introduce themselves. So I will begin with Ryan.
Thank you very much, Simon, and hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Dermody. As mentioned, I run Norcan Petroleum Group, which is actually an energy distributor. So we are already involved in both biodiesel and ethanol, and have been for some time. We're quite avant-garde when it comes to lowering what we call our carbon intensity of the products that we disseminate onto the market. Prior to that, I was in private equity, so I've invested in renewable energy projects. Unfortunately, I've lost quite a bit of money on some renewable energy projects during that time as well. So I've got and prior to that, I was in London, heavily involved in the biofuels market. Before, of course, Germany ended the subsidies and collapsed the whole biofuels market in Europe. So I've got quite I would say, a pragmatic view on the energy transition. I think just one general comment before I pass on to the next panelist is that the issue that we have in the energy and oil sector is that there is no global consensus right now on what the energy of the future is. And that's creating issues as to where to invest, how to adapt infrastructure, what infrastructure to adapt. We see that Japan does not back electric vehicles. They're going down the hydrogen route. And obviously this poses problems from an auto manufacturing perspective. It poses problems from a distribution perspective. So without a consensus, and without a full analysis, as Rudolph mentioned, of life cycle emissions, it's going to be very challenging to go forward in a meaningful way to lower our carbon intensity in the transportation sector. This is the same for shipping and aviation fuel. There is really no consensus on how to go forward in an economic way. And the other big factor is that we're not at the moment assessing the social impact of each of the different new energy sources. So I think we're hearing a lot of government sound bites, but we're not having a lot of scientific data. So with that, I'll maybe hand it back to you, Simon, and look forward to speaking further on this.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. It's up to you, Cédric.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cédric Dever, and I'm the global expert in plastic and on polymers for the L'Oréal Group. Then my mission is to be sure that we have in our portfolio of innovation the right technologies, the right materials that would support L'Oréal commitments, especially sustainable commitments in the field of. And I'm representing today the packaging side of L'Oréal. And a pleasure to be there.
Okay, thank you very much, Cédric. And Annick, it's up to you now.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you. I run an NGO of 300 fashion companies, all very much engaged to dramatically change their business model, because fashion accounts for 2 to 5% of CO2 worldwide. So it's a very bad industry altogether. And we have to change everything, because garments we use are 65% made out of polyester. And fashion produces 180 billion poly bags in a year. So a lot is to be done.
You, Nick. So we'll begin our session now. We have the advantage today to have many panelists from different sectors. That's very interesting, and we want to hear the approach, the vision of this sector. So we'll begin with you, Cedric. The cosmetic industry, the personal care industry, is in full speed to bring new alternatives to the market. What is your vision, by the vision of L'Oréal, and also the main bottleneck that you are facing when you are speaking about when we are speaking about innovative packaging?
Very interesting question. Yeah, today L'Oréal is engaged in reducing the quantity of plastics that are used in our packaging. This is one of our commitments. It's sure that we will still need some plastic, and we will search for circularity when we are still using plastic. But the main objective is to replace the plastic by something else. And today, we already started our journey on cellulosic-based packaging, meaning doing some paper-based bottles, working also on new tubes based on paper. But this is a very long journey. And we think that outside of the paper, we have also some opportunities in other biomaterials. And when I'm speaking about biomaterials, for us, it's plastic-free solutions, meaning that it doesn't contain any synthetic polymers in the packaging. And today, we think that in algae, it's a very interesting feedstock in order to extract from this algae natural polymers that could be used in packaging application. But it's sure that it's a very long journey. This is something that we just started, and we are not thinking that we are going to replace before many years plastic by these natural biopolymers. And today you have to do you have to create all the value chain. You have to make investment. You have also to be sure that you have the right performances, because in the cosmetic industry you need to have some high barrier performances, the oxygen or versus water, in order to keep our cosmetic formulation still active after some years. Then meaning that we will need also some barriers to add on these algae-based biopolymers or other natural biopolymers that you can find on the market. And we will have also to think about the circularity of these new solutions. Because today, if it's to replace plastic by something that is not circular, at the end you are creating another issue. Then the idea would also to think about the end of life of this new packaging or these new materials, in order to be sure that we are still keeping the circularity and we are still sustainable. Very easy to say on very big words, but this is something that we have to keep in mind.
Okay, good, great. Nick, you're representing the fashion industry, and it is not usual for us to have people from the fashion industry in such a panel. So we want to hear about you. You are representing a large number of companies that working in the fashion industry. What could be your role in all this innovative packaging? Can you share us what you think about that?
We started working about 6 years ago now with companies which started to be convinced that their business model was going to a big loss in a short time. And so there is so many issues to deal with at the same time. But we say to ourselves no one can do it alone, be it Kering, be it whoever, be it the largest fashion group. They can't work out alone. So we decided to put all those people together to the same table, and that they are going to work with a very short span time, means we give them 1 year to solve some problems. So we started to work on the polybag issue, how to replace all the polybags that everyone was using just to carry some shirts from China to Europe. And then we put them to the dustbin, and then they go to landfill. So that's really useless things. And in 1 year time, all those big companies, 25 work together, could reduce by 30% the amount of polybags they were using by different ways. Some started to use paper bags instead, or cardboard, or recycled scraps of fabrics to link denims, for instance, to carry them. So altogether, they started to have some interesting ideas and test them immediately. That was the point, that each of them was trying a different solution, and they would meet again and share. The point was everybody was sharing what they were finding and testing. So in 1 year time, all the white paper is on our website. Anybody can just find it and see all the solutions that those companies have been doing together. And now we're going to work on many different things. And the biggest one is how to replace polyester in the garments, in the products themselves. So we work on how to eradicate fossil plastic, PU in shoes, any kind of plastic, how to eradicate plastic out of fashion. So I agree with Cedric. It's a long way. It seems like an Himalaya, but it's our duty. We have to do it all together.
It's good to hear that. Ryan, we want to hear also from the oil and petroleum industry. You know, you talk a little bit during our introduction about this, but what is the role? How can your industry can help and out this biomaterial for the future?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, in Canada and we see in parts of the United States, there's already it's heavily regulated. So we have regulations such as the low carbon fuel standard, which is a carbon credit based system, which puts a charge or a tax on carbon effectively. So Norcan, though, has been involved in this, in lowering our carbon intensity for quite some time by blending ethanol. We've been blending 10% ethanol for over a decade, which is way above regulations, because we feel, again, it's our duty to lower the carbon intensity and be involved in carbon management. I think there's two distinct products which are both challenging. There's gasoline and diesel. Gasoline, typically you blend ethanol to lower the carbon intensity. And the issue with that is that as we go from 10% ethanol to 15% ethanol, cars prior to 2016 are not capable of running on that product. So that will be a challenge in itself. The feedstock and the land usage of the feedstock for ethanol is a big challenge as well. Obviously, we don't want to replace food for oil, as we've seen in the past. So what type of feedstock do we use in the place of, say, corn? So we're looking at alternatives such as genetically modified microalgae, sugarcane, but even those will be restricted because we don't want to start cutting down rainforests, for example, and growing alternative products to create fuel. So we've got the social impact of the production of ethanol that has to be considered as well. When it comes to biodiesel, you've got two types of product. You've got renewable diesel and biodiesel, and each of them have different properties. Biodiesel is a blend, whereas renewable diesel can actually entirely replace diesel. So it's what we call a drop-in fuel. You can remove the diesel, you can put in renewable diesel. The issue with both of them is the feedstock. And the limiting factor that we're going to have in the transportation sector is the lack of feedstocks. And again, I come to renewable diesel as a perfect example. We see a lot of refineries converting their refineries into what we call HDRD, or renewable diesel refineries. And the lowest carbon intensity feedstock is used cooking oil. So unless we start eating a lot more fast food, which has all sorts of nutritional implications, then we're eventually going to run out of used cooking oil. So what do we use then? We start using palm oil, then we have land usage issues. So I think there's no obvious answer. So we need to start looking outside of the box. We need to start looking at circular, sustainable feedstocks for biofuels. I think algae could be one that could be very promising, that Shell's looking into, that Total's looking into, as long as it's done in the right way. I think there's other products as well that we could look at, but I think the limiting factor in the biofuel sector is definitely going to be, where do we get the feedstocks from?
And Simon, if you allow me just a comment, on Ryan's, perspective, it's really important, it's not, it's very complicated to try to involve, the oil and gas industry, and Ryan is very open on that idea because he's preparing the future. And what I see as a key component is that oil and gas industry, they have already the existing facilities, and we're going to discuss that. But in terms of future biomaterial, that bioplastic is a byproduct of the oil and gas that we extract. And to that extent, the next generation of biomaterial is really dependent of the strategy that Ryan is trying to implement, for the future. That means that if we go to renewables feedstock, it means that we're going to have a tremendous accelerator, for developing the biomaterial that are coming from renewable sources. And this is key in the discussion.
Yeah, the problem is it doesn't have to take on the land used to feed people. That's the main problem. Exactly. This is the problem we have, because we have one Earth only, and we cannot grow things on the moon yet. So unless we cannot expand our land for cultivation, I don't really know where is the solution. We have to grow some plants. We are really quick growing and are very renewable. That's the concern. And then, as Cedric said, it has to be compostable. It has to disappear naturally very quickly in nature, like paper does. For instance, plastic now takes 400 years to be eradicated. So before we replace A by B, we have to be really demanding on the performance of those new
I'm pretty sure that Rudolph want to say something. Was Rudolph? Go.
No, and I agree with you, Anik. And even in when we look to the future of energy, and we look at the alternatives, I think the social impact is absolutely key. And each of them has their challenges. The batteries have their challenges with 538% increase in copper mining, what the impact's going to have, and I think what should be really important in my view is that the developed nations don't penalize emerging nations in order to lower our carbon footprint. And I think that's what's going on right now, unfortunately, with the mining sector.
Rudy, do you want to tell something on this?
Yeah, I think, when I heard you talk, Simon, then I said, all the things that you listed, I would say we need to do all the above. So the other magic word that I was said was cooperation or collaboration, because we need to reinvent a completely different value chain. And the other thing I believe is that we are still, and most of us are still living in our classical paradigm, which is a linear paradigm, even if we try to bend the straight line into a kind of like a circle. And by the way, it's not a circle. It's a complex system of many loops and links. Even if you think about the packaging value chain, you have literally hundreds of stakeholders and players in to make a PET bottle, for example. And therefore, I think it's also important to realize that if we really want to think out of the box, we need to also understand that the biomass, first of all, I think the agricultural industry needs to start thinking like the chemical industry and say, not a single molecule that I'm using is going to be lost. I'm going to use it for something. This is not the attitude of the agricultural industry. They dump in Europe 700 million tons. Only in Europe, 700 million tons of agricultural waste, which is turned into CO2 and methane, by the way, for most of the part. Then the second thing is, and I like to, for my Canadian friends, the statement of Wayne Gretzky, so famous, well, I don't, for the Canadians, I don't have to explain who he is, famous ice hockey player. And he said, if you really want to be a great player, you go where the puck is. But if you really want to be an excellent player, you go where the puck is going to be. And I think this is what we need to start thinking of in terms of, if we talk about these fantastic materials like what algae, seaweed, and all these products that nature has made for us, essentially, are made of, we need to focus on what is the functional difference, what is the functional capacity, the functional differentiation that these materials bring. Because remember, I talked about, we call it seaweed, algae, and so on. But actually, as a chemist, and I'm a chemist, I talk about carbohydrates and I talk about proteins. So, and there are many carbohydrates and there are many proteins. And there you can start to really rethink how you will use them with the functionality that they have. And they have much more functionality than our synthetic polymers that we have today. And this is this is a mindset change that we need to drive forward, because now we are all looking at this big elephant, I mean, which is called packaging. And we say, oh, let's replace it by paper. Wow, great. I mean, we're consuming the trees faster than they can grow. So let's find another source then. Let's go to seaweed. It's also a carbohydrate. I mean, this is not going to be a solution. Because then you have biodiversity, so monoculture, blah, blah, blah. So
I suggest we can use the waste of the fashion industry. All the garments which are not used every year can be turned into cellulose and maybe made into new packaging for L'Oreal. Who knows?
Well, that's a possibility, but I think we need to think a little bit more in a creative way about this, and that's what I'm saying. You need to exploit the functionality of these material and not just use it as a replacement. I mean, the chemical industry has been trying and I've been part of that for the last 40 years to replace existing synthetic oil-based plastics. And yes, there is an economic argument there, but this level playing field is now being created by all kinds of taxes. So this argument is not going to stand anymore. So the challenge is to use this carbohydrate-based feedstocks, which are all over the world. Everybody has them. So to more intelligently start to use those as a chemical and as a material. And I think this will change the way we think about bioplastics, as we call it, because let's not forget, as I said, a circularity means the question is, what am I going to do with it after use as a consumer?
Is it the analysis that you did at L'Oreal, Cedric, already?
Yes, we want to hear about that because Cedric.
No, but I totally agree with Rudy's comments.
Yes, but the functionalities you're looking for you're looking for interesting functionalities. What could be these functionalities that L'Oreal will like in this new age packaging?
Well, I mean, if I may say something still, just short thing. I mean, carbohydrates are water sensitive, Nature, that seaweed doesn't dissolve in water. Why is this? Do we understand that? When we use cellulose in a paper cup or paper, when it becomes wet, it has no properties anymore. Or even in cosmetic, where you have oils and all these others. How do you do this? Well, Learn from nature, use tomato peels, to make the cellulose water resistance, for exple, or there are other ways. So we need to do a little bit more thinking than just the replacement thinking. Go where the puck is going to be.
I told you, Simon, it's going to be very complicated, to keep Rudy under control.
It's okay, but
I'm going to shut up now.
No, Cedric can speak now. Go.
Yeah, if I can speak, I would say that I totally support Rudy's comments. Today, if we are thinking like what we did for the last decades, we are going to ask to these new biopolymers to meet the existing specifications that are based on plastic packaging. And today it would be very difficult. But what we think that could be a very good opportunity is to use the existing or the intrinsic performance of the nature in order to develop new ways of packaging. I would take here the hydrosolubility. If you are taking a protein that is soluble in water, could we make a pod for a shampoo that would be hydrosoluble when you are using it under the shampoo, under the shower? And you will have also the biodegradation in the tap water, meaning that potentially you have also no waste at the end of it. It's a very good example, but there are probably many more opportunities that have to be investigated, but it's new ways of thinking, and meaning that for companies, we have to think out of the box, but it's very difficult. It's very easy to say one more time, but very difficult to do because we are all used to use plastic. That is a very good material in terms of performances. Then all the specifications are based on this, on the intrinsic performances of plastic. And it's a totally different way of thinking when you are using proteins or polysaccharides. And we think that there are some opportunities on it, but it would be very long.
Good. And about this rethinking, Annick, do you think that the fashion industry can one day decide to not use any more polyester or cotton?
It has to, it should. But the fashion industry is supposed to be very advanced and very agile and very active. It's not. It's very slow. And it always comes to the innovation after everyone else, kind of. So we are trying to push. Of course, the consumer is pushing a lot because some markets are growing very fast. So some companies are suddenly realizing that the business will escape if they do not act very quickly. Now they have to run like Usain Bolt to meet their customers' expectations because they've just been sleeping actively for the past 10 years. It's a big challenge, but the customer expectation will make it happen. I mean, there is no choice. We have no time. People know we have no time. They hear every day what's going on. So they will raise their expectations a lot. So some will be ready, some will not be ready. Some are looking into innovation because we need innovation. We can't face all this challenge without a high level of innovation and a high level of collaboration. I believe that people who are going to work together from different industries, from different industries, people who are going to work deeply into the customer's expectations and abilities to change, because maybe someone is used to this, but suddenly you show them that, and that's okay, even if they were not knowing it before. So a lot of things we realize come acceptable. Like all those retailers who suddenly removed polybags from 30% of their offer. It was easy. It was done in months, but nobody had figured out before that, okay, we're going to do it together. Okay, so that's for me the main point, is to work hard together, because we have no time. We don't have 10 years. We don't have 10 years. So we have to do things which are possible in 3 years. Things that are possible in 10 years, they're not interesting. 10 years will be too late.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Ryan, those big companies has to propose these changes, but as Annick told, it can be slow. What do you think about that? Do you think that the oil and petroleum industry can do more?
I think that we need to, for sure. I agree with everything that Rudy said, by the way, on thinking out of the box, and I won't go into technical details of what that means in the oil industry, because I'll put you all to sleep. But I think what we do need to do is we need to have much more collaboration, and then we need to have a common view, because if we don't have a consensus as to the direction we're going with energy, we won't be able to alter what is a very mature supply chain. So that is the issue that we're going to face in our industry, in the energy, not just the oil industry, but in the energy industry, is that right now there is no common view internationally, and we saw that in COP26. We see that China didn't participate, Russia didn't participate. Certain countries are going down the biofuels route, others are going down electric cars, others are going down hydrogen. We can't have them all, and each of them have negative impacts as well that have to be studied. So I totally agree with Rudy. I agree with Anik. I agree with Cedric. We need way more collaboration, but most importantly, we need an international consensus as to where the puck's going to be, as Rudy said.
Okay, good. But
and Simon, if you allow me to jump in, because this is a very important point. I don't see anything happening in the future, and we had a conversation. We touched base on this, in the previous session. But without collaboration, there is absolutely no future. We're talking about developing a brand new system, brand new industry, where the large player will play an essential role. We need to convene finance, but that will be the part of the next session. But also we need, to use what is already existing. And the oil and gas industry could play a major role in accelerating, this new type of polymers, because they have plants all over the world. And if we try, to put seaweed, in their biorefinery to extract on one side some oil for the purpose of the oil industry, and use, the fiber and the residues for different purpose, then we have a tremendous accelerator. Not that I'm saying that we will convince all the oil and gas, to jump in, but luckily we have people, like Ryan, that are preparing the grounds, for this type of future move. And it's essential that we coordinate between Anik, Cedric, Ryan, what could be done in common, because it's going to require lots of money. And we need to optimize the value chain from production, and the oil and gas industry could become one of the largest seaweed producer in the future. But also, from the L'Oreal point of view, if I start to accelerate sea farm around the world, then have a big impact, because I know where to source my seaweed. And for the fashion, it's a quickest way, to eradicate what is a plague. So I think that sustainability is a key driver, and it's a common denominator. But we need, to get into deeper discussion on how we're going to use the excellence and the competencies from the different sectors to combine this to create this new industry. This is important.
Yep.
Indeed. And there is also other sectors that are not around the table, but the forest industry sector can help a lot. All these pulp and paper equipment can be used for other purposes than making paper. They can help us to prepare the biomass to make the biomaterial that you want. So yes, the solution is multi-sectorial.
And the food industry as well, because there is a lot of waste. Like we have an entrepreneur doing a substitute of leather out of mangoes and banana fruits, which are coming into France, imported, and 30% are thrown because they are not mature, or not this, or not that. So it is using those wastes to do a substitute of leather with absolutely no chemicals inside. So this kind of collaboration in between different industries, looking at waste is one thing, and looking at bio-based materials which are not using land is the second one.
Yes.
According to me. And this is what we are expecting in fashion. I mean, everybody is like, waiting like crazy to have new fibers, because we have 25% cotton, 65% polyester. Everything is wrong. So we have to replace everything we use. So we have really a major challenge in the fashion industry.
And Annick, I couldn't agree more with you, but we have already this biomaterial. Now it's how we're going to scale it up, because producing a nice polymer, and Rudy could develop this, it's not that complicated. But developing this type of polymer at scale is the challenge.
And from our perspective, Pierre, just to add, a lot of what prevents us from using new materials in, for example, ethanol production is government regulations. So they have to be approved. We have to have the carbon value of the material, and there's a whole scientific process to go through, as we talked about on our call last time. So we need the government as well to collaborate in helping us speed along some of these calculations to allow us to use these new materials in the production of biofuels.
Yes.
Maybe we can hear from Cedric. He's always working. He's actually working on cellulose solution, but it takes time, as he told in his introduction. What about the seaweed, Cedric? What do you think about this type of biomass and the potential biomaterial that we can get from it? And also, can we combine cellulose solution to seaweed solutions? What do you think about that?
You can do a lot of stuff. No, but what is important, it's at least to have a circular material, and meaning that you have to play on the origin of the feedstock, replacing fossil resources that are limited by bio feedstock that could be renewables. But if at the end there is no end of life, there is no collection system, etc., it's the same thing than plastic. You are going to lose all the value of the material. Then it's very important to play on the two things. It means playing first on the origin of the material. Then using seaweed is super interesting. Using cellulose is super interesting. But why everyone is moving on cellulose? It's that today there is a recycling system, a collection system on the recycling that is working for paper-based solution. Today, if we want to move on proteins, today there is no collection system dedicated to proteins. I don't know if you can put after the protein materials in the paper trash. If there is no issue, perhaps it can work, but at least we need to recover the material by a certain way. Maybe by composting. This is a very open circular solution, but could it be collected? Could it be recycled, etc.? And it is why it's a question of, it's a question of material. It's a question of value chain. Today we can't do anything. We can't do anything alone. It's impossible. But if you don't have also the collection system in the loop, it's not going to work. We have to think, ahead, and we have to think also on what's going to be the end of life of this material. It's a very emotional topic. Then it's very easy to say, it's super good to replace plastic, fossil-based plastic, by seaweed materials. But what is important, it's also to have the life cycle assessment, and this is based on facts, and this is the way we should work in order to be sure that we are doing the right thing. Because today it's very easy to say, I'm going to use seaweed to make a packaging. But it's going to be very good. It would be well accepted by the consumer. But if there is no collection system, what's the point? We have to show by a life cycle assessment that we are doing the right thing.
Actually, Cedric, this is a very good point, because there is no need, for collection with seaweed packaging, because most of the seaweed packaging, they are home compostable. So that means that, it's either water soluble or home compostable. So we need, to define a new end of life type of product, which is really important. But if we move in that direction, that means that people will be able either, to put that, in their bath tube, to make a spa treatment, or put that, feed the hands with, the bio packaging, or put that, in the toilets and flush it, because it's water soluble. So it's a new concept. And I was explaining in the previous session that had, a hard time, with a big distribution group because say, well, Pierre, my last, point, you can't check it because what about, my recyclable, option? I say there's no recycling because it's uncompostable. Say, oh yeah, well, so we're going to wait until the regulation, put that on paper. And you're right, and Ryan was right. It's also how the government and the global organization can push, for inventing this new regulation that will accelerate this type of, packaging. It's very important to consider that as well.
Yes, indeed, we will like it, everything that dissolve in the water and disappear, but it is not always like this. But if, for example, we are succeeding to improve the compostability of such packaging, what do you think about that? Do you think that, because many people talk about recyclability, okay, but if one day those new packaging are compostable, adequately compostable, what do you think about that? Do you think it is a good end of life? Cédric or Annick?
It depends if we are in the world of plastic. If we are in the world of plastic, we are in winter, we are coming in winter, your own compostable plastic will not biodegrade in a few months. This is a standard that has been defined in very specific conditions that are laboratory conditions, 28 degrees Celsius for 1 year. This is the certification of home compostability. But in the reality, you will never find these conditions in real life. And what would happen in Canada when it would be winter? There would be a lot of snow. There would be microbes that would be very surprised that their packaging that was said or claimed to be home compostable was still there. And then you would find some conditions where there would be no home compostability. And you would find also some microplastics that would end at the end of it. But what would be important is if you are in plastic-free materials, there would be no microplastics, or there would be fragments of the material that would not be any issue for the environment or for the aquatic life or whatsoever. Then this is something that is interesting, but we have to separate if you are still in the world of plastic or if you are still in the world of plastic free.
Okay. Good.
Maybe cities will invest in composting activities as well, because we all need. Okay, somebody try their own compost. Maybe if you have a garden, that's okay. But if you have a small flat, how do you do? Some cities now are opening some public composting places, which maybe will be run with a little more heat or whatever. I mean, I think it could be organized. But cities like Roubaix, the city where we have our NGO, is the city of zero waste. So they are trying a lot of new things. So maybe cities could invest in those composting places, maybe.
So you are telling us, Annick, that the cities can play an important role in all of those changes that we will like?
Of course.
I totally agree with that. It is a major player. When the city decides something, it means that the citizens are normally agree with the city. So it is a lot of people that we can mobilize for change. Interesting. But speaking of changes, okay, I will begin with you, Annick, about the transition. You told that actually it is going slowly, and for the fashion industry. So are we expecting a transition or not?
Yes, the transition will happen with the business. It's not happening by itself, because no one wants to take the risk, if you're a CEO. But if your investors tell you to change, then you change. And if your customer tells you to change, then you change. So now it's happening quicker because the market is evolving very quick. So it's happening now, not quick enough. What is uneasy is fashion industry imports 90% of what it sells in Europe. So we import from Asia, where the energy is fossil, either coal or gas or whatever. So we have this again, another major problem. That's the energy we use. So it's like we have a lot of things to solve in a very short span time. But some companies are really taking the issue now very seriously, not only talking, but working hard, because some CEOs of large groups and large investors, some large funds know now that if companies have not changed within 2-3 years, then they will have no business. So they have to.
And Ryan, it means that we have to change our business model. The business model, the actual business model will not be the same anymore. What do you think about that? You're representing big company, the oil and petroleum industry, which is very conservative,
I think we're certainly everybody's committed to lowering carbon intensity. I think regulation, good regulations are being put into place on national levels. But I come back to my point that there's no global consensus in the direction that we're going to go. And I think that there's a lack of scientific research on the impact of the alternative energy sources. So I come back to, batteries, the fact that cobalt comes predominantly from the Congo, which are, where children mine the cobalt at 30 pence an hour, I think I read last time, where you're going to have to increase copper production, nickel production. What is the impact going to be? How are we going to recycle the batteries? Japan has rejected the electric car and have said that hydrogen is the best solution. I have no opinion. I'm a distributor, by the way, so I don't particularly have an opinion on it. But my point is that until we have a global consensus on the direction that we're going to go, you've got countries like Brazil, which are going entirely biofuels. They're going 100% biofuels. So what are we going to do? Even within Canada, I think I mentioned to you the different provinces have different views. So are we going to have, a General Motors plant in Alberta, one in Quebec, one in all making different vehicles? Do we change cars at the border? How are we going to handle the infrastructure, the filling stations? They're really, 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 really complex issues. So I think the first step is to have a global consensus. But at least the LCFS, so the low carbon fuel standard, is obliging the industry to lower the carbon intensity. And I think that's a fantastic first step. I think the next step, which needs to happen really, really quickly, is some scientific fact around the alternatives and a consensus on what the alternative is.
Good. Okay, good. Maybe I will like, because I'm seeing the time that's going fast. Rudy has disappeared. Oh, he has disappeared. Okay. All right. Well, now we are mute, Pierre.
I think that Rudy had a problem, with his connection, so he's coming back. I had exactly the same issue, network connection. So, well, he's going to come back. He has to log off and log in again.
Okay,
but
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Maybe in this case we can speak a little bit more about the life cycle analysis. Sometimes it is. Rudy is there. Rudy?
Yeah, sorry guys.
Okay.
For some reason I'm getting connected. Maybe I'm talking
too much. You will try to
yeah?
answer to the question that I will ask you, because during your introduction you speak a lot about the nature, that we have to follow the nature, that deal with the carbon and all this stuff. Can you tell a little bit more about that? We are speaking about packaging now, biomaterial packaging. What the nature can tell us about that?
Well, first of all, nature already invented a lot of packaging. So think about eggshells and shells and so on. But I would like to actually add a bit of a different dimension here on to the discussion, and that is the social dimension and the behavioral dimension, or the psychology of the crowd, if you like. Because if we want to introduce new materials or introduce something different, then we are going to impact how people have to behave. If I talk to my grandmother, she was collecting paper bags from the bread and reusing them, and never throwing anything away. Your plate was completely eaten, and so on. So now, nobody gives a damn, if I can put it like that. and I think there is also a question of the social aspects, the sociology, if you like, or the sociological behavior in combination with how politicians behave. Because as you can see, if I see that in our politicians, there is in the German parliament with the latest election, they made a list of who was in the parliament and what kind of background do they have. There was not a single person with a technical background. So how can they understand what we are talking about? I mean, maybe they know the word bioplastics, but they don't. It doesn't have any meaning. So this is one of the combinations we should not forget. Yes, I think we have a technical challenge, but I think the technology, we are very clever people, and I think we can handle the technology, certainly today with the knowledge that we have. But the socio-economic aspect is going to be a much, much bigger effort. And you can see that in the COP26. I mean, if you know that today people in New Delhi are dying from the toxic smoke, and then these guys, the politician decides we are going to continue with coal, then I mean, I don't know what their mind is. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous.
Yes, but you know, it is not necessary to always depend from the government. The cities can play a role. I'm not speaking about the big cities, but maybe the medium-sized city, the small-sized city, who can take leadership and that. And after it is easier to spread around other cities. You know, I think.
Yeah, but I think the point is that we need to work from the bottom up, and I think this is the famous word is going to what is now known as a regenerative distributive economy. Yeah? So that means you are going to use the local resources in order to produce the local needs and the functionalities that you have. And as I said in the beginning, it's important to, if I buy a bottle of wine or water or whatever it is, I'm interested in the water or the wine. I'm not interested in the packaging, actually. And I think this is one of what I mean with functionality. How can we bring the functionality of clothing, of cosmetics, or whatever we want to humanity, if I like. I hate to use consumers because we're all consumers, but I think it's important that we start to understand this better, and certainly the socioeconomic aspect is I believe a much bigger challenge, which relates to how do we collaborate. The first thing, if you talk to people, they say, well, you need to write an NDA, non-disclosure analysis. Oh, how much is this patentable? Now, I perfectly understand the reasons for that, but if we really want to collaborate, we will need to share, and we will need to prepare to sharing some understandings that we have from the different competencies, the different disciplines, the different experts. And I think this is one of our biggest challenges to bring this collaborative effort together, and that means the socioeconomic context, because maybe the other word that we need to start using is what I would call symbiosis. Symbiosis is a process where two organisms come together and they both have a benefit, or multiple organisms. And I think this is the way nature works. It works in symbiosis. So everybody has a benefit. And obviously it's a balance. It's sometimes a delicate balance.
Rudy,
and this is what I think we need to strive for.
I do not exactly agree with you when you say the packaging is not important. In some industry, including the cosmetic industry, the packaging is really important because it's a piece of art sometimes, and the product that you have is combined with the packaging, the design of the packaging, and the product itself. So I think that in most of the sector, the consumer is more interested by what is inside. but the packaging is also bringing this additional value to the product by, you know, being a piece of art. So I think
Yes.
that, and there are many other sectors.
But that's what I call the emotional value, you know.
You're right.
This is
Yeah, but
emotional
it
value.
is a human factor. The human factor.
Yeah,
you
this
know?
is the human factor, you know. So,
Okay.
so that's fine. You know, I'm not against that.
Yeah, yes, but we can hear from Cedric and Annick. You know, their customer, I think they like good packaging.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yes.
Isn't it? So, do you think that this social economic issue is concerning your boat industry, Cedric and Annick?
I think we are representing global. From a personal point of view, I'm not only working for Europe, I'm working for all the countries. And I'm not working just for solutions that would be good solutions for European people, but also in India. How can we make it happen also? Today, there are a lot of sachets that are used in India for to use as that are used as the packaging for shampoo. They are thrown away and they are totally lost. And it's billions of sachets that are used. Then what could be used in order to replace this plastic that are used for sachet by sustainable solutions?
Okay, good. And Annick?
I think actually that the consumer is very advanced, much more than we think. It's companies which are late. So customer is ready to understand what is good for him and what is good for the planet and what is good for their survival, if they think about in 10 years' time or 20 years' time. We just have to bring it to them, which we are not doing fast enough. We stay with our old poly bags without thinking. We stay with our old plastic bags without thinking. So we just have to think faster and find solutions faster. And the customer is ready. Really, in Roubaix, where I lived, it's the poorest city in France, poorest city. 50 or 60% of people are on welfare. And this is where the experiment Zero Waste was started with 400 families, which suddenly changed their way of life completely. They were no more going to the supermarket to eradicate plastic. They were shopping at the market. They were shopping together. One was growing this, the other was growing that, and they were exchanging food. And after 2 years, they saved around 150 euro per month, which is enormous for a family having 500 euros per month. So people are ready. You just have to explain a little bit how it works, what it is, what it does, and they're not stupid. I mean, they are engaged. They know that they want things to change. It's just they have to have the right solutions in front of their nose, because they don't know, they're not scientists. So we just have to explain a little bit and tell them, okay, if you're not doing this, that's better than if you're doing that. And it's very quick. In Roubaix, the change was extremely quick. It was really amazing how people took this, because it was good for them. It was good for their finance. And they felt that suddenly they had taken back control of their own life, which is the main point. So I think a lot is possible with people, with the consumer. We just don't have to say, oh, the consumer is not ready or whatever. They are more than ready. We are the culprits. We are not doing the work fast enough.
Okay, good. But maybe Ryan, you want to tell something about that?
I come back to my social impact comment. What concerns me the most is all of our industries require energy. And what I see and what concerns me the most is that the wealthier countries use developing nations in order to benefit our own reduction in carbon intensity. And I just think it's really, really important to consider social impact when we're looking at the energy of the future. And I don't think that information's out there, and I don't think people are entirely aware of what goes into their products, where the energy comes from, and I don't think that necessarily that the governments are too vocal about it either. The India example that you just gave, Rudy, is a really good one. But don't forget, there's coal-fired power stations still used in Europe.
Yeah,
France is going back to nuclear power, and these are not topics that we're talking about. We're talking about the end product being whatever vehicle you're choosing, but how are we going to fuel those vehicles, and where's the energy source coming from? That's what's important. And how is that going to impact if we're strip mining all of Africa for the products of the future? Maybe that's not such a good idea.
But that's very interesting what you are telling, Ryan. Maybe we have to change the energy first after we'll change the material.
Yeah.
Interesting. Rudy, you heard from our other panelists. Do you want to add something last on this social stuff? Did you hear me, Rudy?
No.
You hear me? No. I am a.
So maybe I would like to maybe comment a little bit on what Annick says. I think the element, I understand your point. I also know Roubaix. I'm from Belgium, by the way, so not too far from Antwerp. So the point is that there is also this aspect, and I think this is a social aspect, which is called scarcity and abundance. I think it's a bit of a human nature. I agree with you that people are not necessarily dumb or whatever we want to call it. But I think it's a matter of availability, a matter of acceptance, a matter of needs, in the sense of, I mean, these people that you're talking about really have a challenge. And I'm sure the people in certain development countries, these billion, or I don't know how many there are, also have a challenge which is called daily survival. So they don't care about our finest discussion, but so it's all these elements that we need to bring together, and that makes it extremely complex. And to your point, Ryan, it's we end up in all these discussion of having, it's difficulty to bring a consensus. Everybody wants to do their own stuff, and I think in a global economy, this is not going to work. So we will need to go to bring this discussion and this solution finding. And I say, in my opinion, I think part of it is we need to try to stop solving the problems of the past that we created on our own, and find how we do it in a different way for the future. Finding solutions for the future, and not because many of the challenges that we have today. I mean, yes, we have created that over the last 70 years. Many of these challenges. But it looks like we're in a kind of like a dead-end street, and then we are trying to go into reverse, but we don't know how to do the reverse. So these are this is what I actually mean with the socioeconomic aspects, which are very different, and for some it comes down to basic functionalities. For other it comes down to, well, we have abundance. I don't really care too much about certain things.
No, I don't
think this is a mentality.
Rudy, I don't think that people are thinking this way anymore. I think that people are very concerned. And the great thing is that the next generation, the young generation, is very picky on this. I see that every day. And they don't accept, the mess we did, 50 years ago with the agriculture. They don't want that, and they don't like, the business as usual. And what is great, today in this type of panel is that we have so many different areas that are not related, but we have the same say and the same vision. And we understand that, there must be a change. There must be a change. And we're trying to push some ideas and some direction. I don't know which one will be the one that will emerge, the soonest. But I think that it's going to take some time. It's not, one or the other or against the other. It's going to be a teamwork. and it's going to be a global approach. And I know that from the cosmetic point of view, they have this vision to eradicate, plastic. It's exactly the same in the fashion industry, because we created something that we cannot control, but the consequences are important. And I'm glad also today that we have the oil and gas being part of this panel, because they are the key component again. And if they are present on this type of panel, it means that they are already preparing the ground, and they know the offshore, they know how to handle, rough seas, they know how to help, people to harvest, because they have been, developing offshore platform for years. They know how to transform some crude oils into, different type of product. So they are one part of the chain. And I think that also the leadership of companies like L'Oreal is the most important, because when L'Oreal says we want to do something, it means that all the companies working in the chain with L'Oreal will have to adapt. And most of the time, these companies, they say, well, we don't have choice, because we've been ordered, this type of plastic. But if L'Oreal say, no, I want you to think differently and maybe to bring more bioplastic, they will start chasing the right companies that can produce this bioplastic. So it's a teamwork. And this is what I like, in this type of discussion. We know, we agree, but next step is how we're going to make it, happen.
Yes, but you just told a magic word, the leadership. We need leadership, okay? So Cédric, do you want to be our leader, or Annick?
Yeah, L'Oreal is a well-known company, but in terms of volumes, we are small, meaning that we can take the lead. But what we like to do, it's also to team up with other brand owners, because if we want to make it happen, we can't do it alone, even if L'Oreal is the leader in the cosmetic industry. We need to be together in order to create volumes. By creating volumes, you are starting the change. But it's even more than just brand owners teaming up. It's more a global question about what do we want to do in the future, and it's a global question. It's not only just from the perspective of brand owners.
Good. And about the potential leadership of the fashion industry, Annick, we are all wearing something, clothes. So you're touching all the citizens of the world.
The little problem is that we are more and more, it's not a problem, we are more and more humans on Earth, and most of us are wearing clothes. So the impact of the fashion industry is supposed to be about 20% of the carbon impact by 250. So it's really very, very worrying. I don't think there will be a sort of common agreement worldwide, because many people are trying many different things. And for me, that's great. We cannot have a consensus now. It's too early. You have to try, test, see, think, meet. There is a lot of tests to be done yet. And this is what's going on just right now, with many research, many people doing many startups, a lot of the industry is boiling kind of to solve the problems. So I hope that many things will happen. But again, without research, without anything, there is already a lot of things that we can do just by ourselves. Research is key, but if we think about what we're doing and look at it and decide to change, already we can do so many things. We are now doing for the cosmetic industry some wrap-ups in recycled textiles, for instance, not for L'Oreal, for another group. But so there are ideas, just looking at what has to be done. What do I have now? What can I do now? I think we have to start with this, what we can do now. Okay, there are governments, there are laws, there are common agreements, there are whatever, but we have to work it out now already.
Simon, we have 2 minutes, so I suggest we give the floor to Ryan, and so we can cut off, Rudy, because he's gonna last, 5 minutes.
Okay, correct, Ryan.
My last comment is to perhaps in our industry is to be very careful by having the poor pay for the transition. And what I mean by that is that if we go through innovative products, take a BMW hydrogen vehicle, your person on the median salary is not going to be buying a $200,000 car. And so what will happen is, as gasoline prices increase with carbon taxation, the poor will end up paying for the energy transition. So it's something that I think we need to really think about, because it's something that happened in Europe during the transition. And that would just be my last comment, that I think governments need to consider, that we all need to consider, because it's not fair.
That's good. Good. So Thais, we spoke a lot about what it needs. You know, we spoke a lot about the biomass supply chain, but also about value chain, that we need that, but we must not forget all the people on site, on place, on the field. It will be to those people who have access to the biomass, to the next generation of biomaterial, and it will involve local processing, local people. So all this social aspect will be important there also. So I think yes, we want to be global, but we always need to think locally first, and it will be very important for that. So, and about seaweed, we like to speak about seaweed. We believe that it could be a great candidate for the future biomaterial, but it will need to learn from other sectors. Okay, so we need many other sectors to help to develop this seaweed future biomaterial supply chain.
Thank you so much for participating. Rudy, you won't have, the final word, because we need to jump into the other one. But I'm happy, that people could connect with you for tomorrow meetings and discuss with you, because you are a great inspiration, for this new type of biomaterial. So thank you very much, Simon, for moderating this panel. That was quite a challenge, but very efficient. And thank you all, for your time. And thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you,
Bye.
Simon.